For my painting process, I start with a gessoed board, which I put a quick sketch on to set the composition. I then water down some acrylic paints to put an initial light layer of pigment on the board. I typically work from top to bottom and from right to left, and want to get down the main shapes first. So in this painting here, I put the sky in around the building and then started laying some bushes and foliage in. I next try to set the highlights. Here I'm putting a bright red roof right in the dead center of the canvas. And then I'll have the 1-point perspective lead toward that center to move the eye to the middle of the canvas. I guess ignoring the Fibonacci sequence. I now start putting some detail in to rough in some windows and doorways. And I'm still using very watered down acrylic at this point. As soon as I'm satisfied with the overall composition and the color scheme of the painting, I then use much thicker paint that I'll now start laying on top of my wash. I paint with Charvin acrylics because I like their creamy texture. My color palette here is very limited. I use an ultramarine blue, a lot of yellow ochre, some cadmium yellow, cad red, and a little bit of magenta, a little bit of burnt umber. That's pretty much my color scheme. And these are all mixed in with lots of white. At this point, I'm trying to reestablish some of the edges of the buildings to give some atmospheric perspective. I like having buildings on either side in a cityscape like this that kind of creates a tunnel for the eye to go down to the middle of the picture. With the architecture set in the painting, I now turn to the foliage and just start dabbing in some leaves on the tree and putting a lot of bushes in. In this particular cityscape, the trees and the shrubbery kind of line the sidewalks. So I just kind of go from light to dark and dark back to light so that there's a rhythm to the bushes. I'm now going to paint a bright orange flower pot in the bottom right of this painting to give an entry point for the eye. The eye then is supposed to follow the sidewalk up to the center of the painting where the bright red roof is. So the flower pot and red roof kind of work as a counterpoint against each other. While I have some orange paint on the brush, I'll dab a little bit of it into the center of the painting just to add some flowers and some specks of color. I very rarely clean or rinse my brush off. I just kind of go from one color to the other. Now I'm going to lay some dark shadows in along the sidewalk and the street that would be cast shadows from the bushes along the edge. At this point in the painting, I'm laying in some lights and darks to create a rhythm to keep the eye moving around the picture plane. So far, I've been painting on this picture for about 45-50 minutes. So to wrap it up, I'll go back up into the sky and put some clouds in. I like to have my clouds be the lightest tone on the canvas. Here I'm putting a little bit of yellow ochre and cadmium red down on the horizon line where the sun would be setting. And with some final touches of shadows under the clouds, I think I'm finished with this one. The whole painting took about 50-55 minutes, but this is very typical of my process.